Hey, Mission. It's so good to hang out with you on YouTube. This is the first time I've ever been on YouTube. Typically, it's Pastor Landon, but today you got Pastor Kev. And I brought in a good friend of mine, John Hagensen, who's been at Mission for 15 years. And really, the idea that I had is I just wanted to take a discussion a little bit deeper than I could on a Sunday and talk about biblical generosity and the framework around it. Many people at church across the country actually don't give anything. And so a lot of reasons for that. And I just want us to dive in and see where the Lord takes us with this conversation. I think it's going to be fruitful. So, John, I want to tell you a little bit about John. I want to introduce John to you. He's been here at Mission for 15 years. He's married to Brittany. Brittany was baptized in this church, and they are raising 7 kids. John, is it 7?
It's 7.
It's 7
Yeah.
kids. So 7 kids. Anybody who has 7 kids, we should probably give 15 minutes of listening to, because there's a lot of wisdom we can
A lot of
we can
trial and
learn
error.
from. A lot of trial and error. That's right. But I love John. He's got a unique background. Listen to this resume, and I think this is really appropriate for today's conversation. He's got an undergraduate degree in biblical studies, a master's in finance, is a certified financial planner, serves as a partner and managing director at one of the largest registered investment advisory firms in the country. And on top of that, you may have heard him on the radio. He has a national radio show every weekend titled Rethink Your Money, and has authored 2 books on personal finance. He's currently writing his third book, and that's going to focus on the intersection of faith and money and providing a biblical blueprint for stewardship that's set to be available in early 2025. Man, I just want to say welcome
Hey,
to
thanks
our
for having me.
podcast. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
this is awesome.
Yeah, well, the reason why I asked you to be here today is there's a lot of questions that Christians struggle answering. And I
Mhm.
actually think most Christians aren't even asking the question, but
Yeah.
need the answers.
Right.
And so, what I wanted to do is just dive into a few questions and allow you to speak into helping us understand biblical generosity for our lives.
Sounds great.
You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The first question that I had is money can feel like really superficial,
Mhm.
less of an important topic than other spiritual matters. Why do you think biblical stewardship and generosity is an important topic for Christians today?
Because Jesus said it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it surprises people that the Bible thankfully does provide a blueprint, like you were saying in that introduction. We don't have to guess. There's 2,300 verses in the Bible on money and
Wow.
stewardship. And, if you compare that to that's more than faith and prayer combined. Almost 50% of all of Jesus' parables were on money. So it was an important thing in the Bible. It was discussed at length. I mean, you think about some of the parables like of the talents, wise stewardship. You think about the rich young ruler
Yeah.
who Jesus says, sell everything. And the Bible says he left disappointed, like he walked away because he had great wealth. So the Bible actually gives us a lot of feedback on how to think about money and how it relates to our faith.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You said 2,300 times. I was actually diving into a couple word counts in the Bible. It's interesting to note that the Bible uses the word believe 272 times,
Mm-hmm.
the word pray 371 times, the word love 714 times, and then the word give and generosity over 2,300 times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a heavy topic in the Bible. So, man, why is it discussed so much?
Yeah, I think that's the next logical question is, well, why is it discussed more than faith or forgiveness, right? Are these things that we perceive to be very important, and they are. It's because the Bible is also very clear that where our treasure is, there our heart will be also.
Yeah.
Jesus spoke about it because, greed and fear in our human nature has been is something that's existed from Bible times until today because we're human beings. And so we struggle with this. And, I like the expression, if you want to know what you care about, look at your calendar and look at your bank statement.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus understood that the most accurate, transparent look into what we actually care about, not what we say we care about, but what we actually care about, can often be found in the way that we handle our finances. And money is also, money's a tool and also a test.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, there are a lot of things we can kind of fake spiritual disciplines. Money's quantifiable. It's hard. I mean, I can look at your schedule A and see whether you're putting your money where your mouth is when I'm working with a client to see, like, are you generous? because it's right here in black and white. And I think that that makes money an important part of our spiritual disciplines.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. One of the questions that I want to dive into is something that I don't think we really want to admit openly. But the question really is, why should I give to a church? And it's interesting to even watch behaviors when we pass the buckets. Like when the bucket comes to me on the front row, I don't actually put anything in it because I give online, but I walk it to the next person and I have to feel the need to tell them like, hey, I give online, right? That's why I'm not putting anything in the bucket.
Right.
But there's a couple statistics that really stand out as a church leader, and I watch statistics around the country, but the old 80-20 rule,
Sure.
right? It's like 20% of the people give 80% of the finances. Here at Mission, we're actually doing a little bit better than that, but not much. But from a country standpoint, from the Big C church point, that's really a very consistent number across the board. And it takes somebody about a year of attending and belonging to a church before they even give their first dollar to a church. So why should I give to a church, and why is it so hard?
Yeah, well, it's hard because of our human nature, I think, and we suffer with the need to keep what we feel like is ours, right? Which we can talk about here in a moment. But the first thing is just obedience. Like God calls us to give.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the second thing that people forget is that the church, while the Lord is working in eternal ways and spiritual ways, we need earthly resources to accomplish some of these things. And I think back to a long time ago, I was new in my career. We traveled to Ethiopia over the course of our adoptions 4 different times. And on one of those trips, I just felt God calling me to do something that mattered.
Wow.
Like I'm helping people that already have money reduce their taxes and, like doing these things that don't seem to make a big difference. Like, why am I doing this? I'm ready to sell everything.
Yeah.
And like, let's take our family, let's do something extreme. Let's move over to Africa. Like, let's get involved with organizations that are actually doing something.
You had a moment like that.
Oh,
you're like,
100%.
We're selling everything.
Oh yeah.
It's like Acts 2 Pentecost. Like
100%.
They just sold all their possessions and we're like cut to the heart. We're like all in.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I think like my in-laws were like, wait, you're about to take our daughter that you just married recently, like across the world. Like, I think they were a little bit nervous about that, And so I set up some meetings with some nonprofits over there.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the last ones, I'm sitting at a coffee shop in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And he tells me basically the same thing that I'd heard from the other organizations, which was, we have plenty of people on the ground. This is great that you want to do this. You know what we really need? And I go, what? You to go back, continue making money, and support us financially. And I was like, wait a second. This is the least sexy idea of all time. Like, this isn't the extreme thing that I was looking for. It was like, no, God needs you to be faithful where you're at. And that means providing resources.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think we miss the point that like our money is needed for things that matter in life. Like, and God wants to use our resources to help make a difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I mean, oftentimes I have to help people understand, how their tithe or their offering really does play into ministry around mission, right? And so, often, I mean, we just got done baptizing 190 people,
right,
a couple weeks ago, and that was like, it was incredible. It was like a revival, Holy Spirit moment. It was like my favorite day of ministry that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's like people just kept coming, and I thought, my gosh, we're gonna be here till 1, 2. Maybe this is an all day thing, right? Like, let's go, God. But I think oftentimes people sit in those seats and they think, well, I'm just giving to a church and I'm giving to a general fund. How does my offering really impact? And I just constantly want to help people connect that your offering first, it doesn't matter the amount, but it comes from a place of gratitude that challenges our heart to open up our hands, right? To say, I want to put my trust in God. And what those offerings do is create environments for people that you don't even know, who are getting up on a stage and testifying to how their brokenness has been transformed through Jesus. And now they get to express their faith and their excitement to be a Christ follower. And then we watch them go down, and then they come up, and then we cheer. And man, it just makes a difference. But I think it's just so hard for that person to want to give, right? It's like my paycheck comes in.
Yeah, well,
now I got to let it go. Like, crazy thought.
Well, and I think so. To add to that, I think when we invest into a retirement account, we sort of understand this principle of like compounding
Yeah.
and exponential growth, and that it'll continue to build over time. But our brains have a difficult time, first of all, even understanding exponential growth. Like if I tell you to add 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, 8 times,
Yeah.
you pretty quickly, okay, it's 32. If I say multiply 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 8 times, that's way harder. I think it's like 65,000, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's something like that, right? Nobody knows.
Somebody check that.
Unless yes, it's somebody can check that right now. But that's how the Lord works with our resources. We get that in an investment account.
Mm.
We don't fully grasp that. I have a personal story of this, speaking of Transformation Sunday. Before that sanctuary was built, my wife Brittany and I were going here, and the church asked us to write names of people that we wanted to see come to the Lord in this new building, on the foundation of the building. And I can tell you firsthand, just a couple of weeks ago, one of those people came out of the water, one of our family members, above the very spot that his name was written.
Praise God. Wow.
Over a decade earlier. And you could say, well, what does that have to do with money? Well, somebody had to build the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Somebody has to pay for the chairs that we sit in. Somebody has to pay for the campus and the air conditioning so we're not in a 115-degree sanctuary and nobody can go to church, right? Some of these things are very practical things that it pays for, but they all contribute to the ministries that we do and the people that support those and the facilities that we use for our kids to come to learn, know the Lord. They're very important.
Right.
And that's, coming back to the superficial thing, like we think of it sometimes as just, it's just our money. No, it's making a huge difference, and it's compounding in a way that we can't even see the entirety of that ripple effect.
Yeah, it's like the early church. I'm always reminded, like, they just got jacked on Acts 2, man. It's like Peter's getting up there and he's teaching, he's preaching, and he's like having to tell everybody, this is the Spirit coming down on us. Like, it's 10 a.m. We're not drunk. Like, we're doing good work here.
Yeah.
And you watch 3,000 people get added to the church, they get baptized, and they just go nuts. They start selling their possessions. They're all in. And it has this whole picture of like surrendering fully, right? Yeah. And I think about the Old Testament. It's like the Old Testament didn't even talk about 10%. It was like 20 to 33%. If you look at the Levitical annual festival tithe, the triennial poor tithe, the mandatory Levitical tithe. I mean, it's quite a bit. So let's get practical. Can we get practical?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So I'm living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of extra cash per month. How can I be generous?
Well, I think you got to frame it correctly to start. You can't say, well, am I willing to give my money? Psalm 24:1 tells us it's the Lord's. Everything is the Lord's. And so, you're a parent too, Kevin. Imagine, you're at a high school football game and you give your kid a 10 because they want to go get some popcorn and something else that's unhealthy for them, probably at the concession stand. And as they're walking over there, you go, oh, wait. Grab me a water bottle. I'm thirsty. Imagine if your kid goes, wait, I'm not giving you a water bottle. Like you would laugh. It would be so ridiculous that you would be like, wait, I just handed you the $10 bill. I'm asking you to get me one thing and you're saying no. That's what we do to God.
Yeah.
It's his. He's blessed us. Yes, we've worked hard and hopefully we've applied, things that natural gifting that he's given us. But like, we were born in America. We live in 2024 in this prosperous time. Like, we didn't have any control over that. And so we have to trace it all back to like, God owns all of this. And I think that makes it easier to be generous. And then the second thing is real practical. You asked for practical.
Yeah.
Whether you're Jeff Bezos or you're barely getting by living paycheck to paycheck, there's only 5 things anyone can do with money. So think of it like a pie chart, right? So there's only, I give you $1. You're either going to save it.
Yeah.
You're going to spend it. You're going to give it. Or the other 2 are you owe it. You either owe taxes or you owe on debt. It's the only thing anyone can do with that $1. And we have this completely backward from a sequence standpoint in America. So what we do is generally we pay our taxes, assuming that you don't want to, have your wages garnished. It's like, so you pay your taxes, you make your minimum payments on debt, you may pay your mortgage because you don't want to get evicted. And then you say, all right, now let's spend and live our lifestyle. For most people in America, we know from all the data, that uses up everything. And sometimes more than everything.
Yeah.
And then that debt cycle continues. But if there's a little left over, then people will go, well, yeah, I should probably save in my 401k or put some money in an IRA. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, there's a little more? Perfect. I guess I'll give a little bit in the offering plate when it comes around.
Yeah.
So what the Bible tells us is completely different. We give of our first fruits. We don't give God what's left over. Like, oh, if there's something left, we'll give it to him. We, number one, prioritize over everything else giving. Then we pay our taxes, we manage our debt. Hopefully we minimize that to whatever extent we can or eliminate it. Then we set up our savings. At the end of that, you draw a line under those 4 categories. All right, I've done these 4 things. What do I have left for my lifestyle?
Yeah.
And then you build your lifestyle around that. And it's kind of like a garage. Like you go from a small house to a bigger house, and you look in the new 3-car garage and you go, I'm never going to fill this. And we've got all this extra space. And a year later, you can't get 2 of your cars in the garage because your Christmas decorations are in there. And you can't. So point being, you will absorb everything if you're not careful. So you have to prioritize them correctly, or you won't have anything left over to give.
Yeah.
You won't have anything left over to save.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking back with our kids, like we have 3 plastic cups. On one of the cups we have, we wrote tithing on it, and the other one, it's like savings. Then the last one, I wanted to write make good choices, on the last cup.
That's great.
But we were trying to teach our kids through that, and that just kind of goes into my next question. But and one of the questions that's been asked is, how do we teach our younger generations about giving?
More is caught than taught with all things parenting, including generosity.
Yeah.
Our kids are watching. And as a parent, that's humbling and convicting a lot of times, right? We've all seen our kids do something and you go, where did they fit? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I know where they got that from.
Yeah, that was Brittany.
Right? Yeah, that was definitely not me.
Yeah,
definitely,
that was me.
Yeah.
That was Aaron.
Yeah, sanctification. I'll be praying for you. But the same can be true of our positive impact on our kids, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing is, if you're not generous and you're not giving of your first fruits and you're not prioritizing things that the Lord cares about with your money, your kids are going to see that. Most of how we think about money as adults traces back to our money scripts and what we witnessed as a child.
Wow.
Like in everything with our money, right? Like if you grew up really poor and you were really embarrassed when your parents would come to pick you up in this car that you were ashamed, like that's the person when they make money, you go, why in the world are they driving this super expensive car? A lot of times it's because they told themselves, even subconsciously as a kid, if I ever have enough money, I'm never going to have that situation again.
Yeah.
Or maybe money was used as a status symbol in your home and you thought, oh, this is kind of icky feeling. And now you're very conservative and you don't want to be showing it. Like all of those things trace back. So as parents, just understand the impact that you have and have conversations with your kids about this. We have something similar to you where it's basically a give, save, spend jar that has 3 containers in it.
Yeah.
There are 3 slots in it. And we talk to them about that and keep it simple. Help them, do it at the level that they understand. And you can start this when they're 4 or 5 years old. You can help them understand some of this is for later. You can use some of it today. But most importantly, who are we giving some to first? Yeah, so even that principle of first fruits, that can be communicated. And then the last thing, expose them to need. A lot of our kids in Gilbert, Arizona, or just wherever you live in America, like they may not have a lot of exposure to people that don't have any money. And so, we took a trip. I know we do One Mission stuff here at Mission. We took a trip with our kids, and I brought even our now 2nd grader. He was between 1st and 2nd grade at the time. My 3 kids that went on that trip still talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it made a huge impact to go down for a few days and build a house. They hadn't seen people that didn't have homes.
Right.
They didn't know, they're carrying around spilling the stucco everywhere. They're like, but that wasn't the point of it. It was to help them have exposure to how their money is the Lord's and how it can impact other people with generosity.
That's great. I love that. Man, our kids lead the way. They inspire us. Even here at Mission, I watch our kids dive in. Like Season of Impact, where we watch our kids lead the way. Like they're going to go and pull off 5 giving tree tags because they're going to take 5 kids, and we're going like 5 kids. Oh my God,
I love that.
hold on, slow down, right? But
How
that's
cool is
just
that?
it's because their heart, right? They have this heart to be like, I'll worry about the details later. My heart is all in to just serve and to love, and it's beautiful. I want to get into two final questions,
Okay.
and I want to talk about. I think oftentimes we limit ourselves in generosity, and how can you increase generosity over time?
2 different strategies that are very practical. Okay. The first applies to most all areas of our lives. Automate.
Yeah,
So if you're hoping that you're going to find in the bottom of your purse or something when the offering plate comes around the right amount of money to give, you're kidding yourself.
yeah,
And we make it so easy nowadays. There's a QR code, there's an app, like you can set it up, prioritize it, and automate it. What gets automated gets done. I thought this was interesting. Vanguard did a study a while back on retirement plans, employer-sponsored retirement plans. So they were looking at 401ks and what sort of actions create impact.
right.
And this applies to our generosity and our giving as well, the very same principle. What they found is companies that made a new employee once eligible log in and sign up for their 401k. I mean, we're talking about something that takes 3 minutes to do. It's
Right.
not a big thing.
Yeah,
We're only saving at 1/3 the rate as companies that simply flipped it to an auto enrollment. Meaning when you became a new employee, you had to do that 3-minute process to opt out. Otherwise, a piece of your paycheck was going into the 401k. Those people were 3 times more likely to save than the people who weren't on a 3-minute. This is how impactful friction and removing it in our lives is.
yeah,
The same principle applies to our giving. Set it up, automate it. Don't make it harder for yourself than it needs to be. You've got a lot of different things going on. Prioritize it, and then it's taken care of. Right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is a hack that I've used for a long time with clients, and it applies to both saving and giving. Every time you get a raise, trick yourself and pretend it's only half. So if you're making $100,000 a year as a household in Gilbert, Arizona, you're doing well, and you get a raise to $110,000. You didn't get a raise to $110,000. You got a raise to $105,000. Take the other $5,000, pretend you never got it. Take $2,500 and add it to your giving. Take $2,500 and add it to your savings, and enjoy the other $5,000. You're still experiencing the fruits of your labor,
totally. Yeah,
but you've never missed it because you never had it. And when you do this, I mean, there are all sorts of charts and things that I could show, like the amount people have saved for retirement. All of a sudden it goes from like, I had $1 million in my 401k to I had $4 million in my 401k when I retired. And the same is true with your giving. Instead of giving $500,000 over your lifetime, you go, whoa, I just gave $2 million over the course of my lifetime, and I never even missed it. So that's a really great thing. Every time you get a raise, pretend it's half.
I like that. That's good. I like $4 million in my
I'm just
retirement account.
Yeah, right.
That's good. I would love to get personal if you're willing to
Sure.
just share your heart a little bit. But where have you seen God show up in your life through generosity?
Well, one story in particular goes back to our adoptions. We were preparing, we felt God leading us to adopt, and we had no money. I had made a career change into finance. I mean, we had nothing. And my wife is just a faith warrior, and she's like, nope, God's calling us to this. And I'm like, the practical one, going, I get it. How?
Yeah, make it make sense on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And God made a way through a very specific thing that we had zero control over. We needed $25,000. A check for $25,000 showed up in our mailbox.
Come on.
Crazy. Like one of those where you're convinced it has to be one of those fake ones that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can sell us your house today for $25,000,
Yeah, right.
right? No, it was really $25,000. About 6 months later, he tells us about his friend from his village in Ethiopia and that needs a home. And my wife calls me and tells me the story. And my first reaction is, oh no. Like, no, like we can't do this. Again, practically thinking, we don't have any money. And we asked others for money. What it took for me actually was lowering my pride.
Wow.
I didn't want to do a YouTube video saying we feel called to this, but we don't have the money for it, because it made me feel bad
Right.
about myself.
Yeah. You don't want to have to ask for help.
Yeah.
I'm a man.
Yeah, exactly. Brittany told me, no, like lower your pride. Like this is worth it. Like this is important. And the way that people showed up in our life, here's $1,000, here's $2,000, here's $10, here's $50. I mean, what was shocking is many people that I didn't expect showed up in such big ways. And it just goes back to the fact that like generosity matters. Like we have these two boys in our home that without the generosity of those who were in a better financial situation than us and just had more available, flexible, resources, they chose to invest in something that was eternal.
Yeah.
And so I that's the first thing that I think of. Another story that I think of to just demonstrate how important our perspective is, because I think so often people think, well, I'll be generous once I hit this.
Yeah. Totally.
Once I have no debt, once I, hit this net worth figure, once I'm making this amount of money,
pay this debt off.
Yeah, then I'll start giving. All of this is awesome. Once I'm there, I'll start doing it.
Right.
It's way more your perspective than your circumstance. We know that frustration is that gap between our expectations and our actual circumstances. We often fixate on how do I change my circumstances? How do I change the outcomes? You know what's way more in our control? Our perspective. And I mean, you've probably traveled internationally at times in your life, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I have.
Like maybe to a third world country.
Phnom Penh, Cambodia.
There you go, right?
Never forget it.
And see, it still stands out to you probably,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think of one time in particular when I was in high school and I worked in the orphanages in Romania. And I showed up in my host family's apartment, high rise in Bucharest, laundry hung out all over the railings, concrete buildings, getting a rickety elevator, pull the gate across, like kind of what you picture probably Eastern Europe 25 years ago. We get into a 2-bedroom apartment with a family larger than mine. And the parents leave their bedroom and they tell me and my friend, you're going to sleep in our room. They slept out on the floor and the couch of the main part of the house. And that first night, they began serving us. They brought us food and tea and all these different foods. And it was just this beautiful, like, demonstration of generosity and hospitality.
Yep.
Like, I remember even as a punk high schooler
Mm-hmm.
being like, wow, I'm moved by this.
Yep.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And so the next day I went to my translator and I said, we were at the orphanage, and I told him what happened. And I said, but one thing was really, I don't understand it. They all sat around on the floor and watched us eat. It's a little awkward. They didn't eat anything. He chuckled and he said, John, of course they didn't eat anything. And I said, what do you mean, of course they didn't eat anything? He said, they've been preparing for you to be their guest for weeks.
Wow.
They can't afford with a huge family to eat like that. They never eat like that. And I had this realization from that trip and other travels. And that is that, number one, money will not make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that power because those people had nothing, and the people in Ethiopia that I've met had nothing.
Yeah.
And they radiated joy and the peace of Christ with every fiber of who they were.
Yeah, that's great.
Right? We've all known people with money that are miserable and people with no money that aren't. But
Yeah.
here's the second thing that I realized. Money, when used in alignment with biblical principles and our faith and things that matter to us, is an incredibly powerful tool to accomplish things. And in America, we're the wealthiest society
Yeah.
in the history of the world. And that's how I end my radio show every week is let's make our money matter.
Let's go. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. It reminds me of, being in Fiji. I had this
Mhm.
similar experience where the gatekeeper brought us into her living room. We sat
Mhm.
down, we had coffee. She didn't have coffee,
Mhm.
but she gave us coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of looking at our guide going like, do we drink this? Yes. And
Yeah.
she's like, absolutely. It was the best coffee I've ever had.
Wow.
But then he told me what it was worth to her.
Mm.
And, the question that he left us with is like, would you do the same?
Mm.
Do you love your neighbor as yourself? And I just thought like, yeah, that was an act of generosity right there.
Right.
That took so much more that she was willing to even offer,
Yeah.
that she even had. And yeah, here we are sometimes holding our things on so tight, right? And
Well, it
so,
speaks to the power of perspective, right?
yeah, it does.
Because you don't get back from a trip like that. Like I didn't get back from Romania, even as a high schooler, and go, well, I wish I had a little nicer car in the high school parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, but that's you have this renewed perspective on what matters
You do.
when you're in
Yep.
those circumstances. And so the question becomes like, how do we hold on to that?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
do we maintain that?
I love that. John, this has been fantastic. I
Well, thanks for
appreciate
having
your
me.
time. And I just want to end with this Acts 20:35. It's Jesus' words. He says, "In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak." Remembering the words that the Lord Jesus himself said, it's more blessed to give than to receive, right? And so I just would challenge all of us who are paying attention, watching this podcast today. I just want to say thanks for joining in. And if you have any questions, any comments, go ahead and drop those in and we'll respond back to those. Thank you for joining us.